Hello everyone, in this video we are going to see Salesforce and Shopify integration using REST API. Things that we'll cover in this video is set up Shopify store, and then we'll create a custom app in Shopify which will generate access token so that other external systems, which is Salesforce in this case, will connect to Shopify. Then we'll test API using Postman. So it's always better to test API before heading on to the Salesforce setup and writing Apex callout classes. Then we'll do the Salesforce setup, like creating named credentials and other field which we require, and then finally we'll head on to the Apex callout class. We'll create a trigger and Queueable Apex class in order to do the callout to Shopify. So what is the business use case that we are looking here? So currently business manage customer data in Salesforce, but their online store runs on Shopify. So whenever they are creating the contact in Salesforce, they want that contact to be created in Shopify as well. They don't have to go and manually create the contact or customer, you can say, on Shopify. So they don't have to do duplicate manual work. Data will be consistent and it will be a good experience for the customer as well as the user. So how we can achieve this? We will look into the solution approach. So whenever a record is created in Salesforce, the contact record is created in Salesforce, it will fire a trigger, it will do the call out using Apex Queueable class, and customer will be created in Shopify. So whenever customer is created in Shopify, it will also create a customer ID, like we have the record ID in Salesforce, right? So that customer ID we need to store back into Salesforce as well on the contact record, so that whenever we update the contact record, it will know which customer to update in Shopify, right? So when it also works for the update. If you update the same contact in Salesforce, it will do the call out again and update the same customer in Shopify as well, so that the data will be consistent across the platform. Don't worry if you don't get it. When we move on to the demo, you will understand how the flow is working. So first we are going to sign up on Shopify. So for that you can search on Google Shopify partner login. You can click the first link whichever you get. Don't worry, I'll put all the link and all the code that we will be building in the description, so do check it out. Click on sign up. So you can sign up using Google here or any other account. Let's say I'll select Google. Okay, so once you sign up onto Shopify, you can go to stores. First you have to create a new store in Shopify. So I already have one store created. I'll create another store. So you have to click on add store, create a client transfer store. Okay, so first you have to give the store name. I'll write realm of Salesforce. Then we can click on create client transfer store. So now your store is created, right? To see if there is any customer already there on the store or not, you can click on customer. You can add a customer here, but what we are going to do in this demo is whenever we create contact in Salesforce, it will sync to Shopify. So now you have signed up on Shopify app. Now you have to go to these settings. Then what is the next step? We need to create an app. Now you have to go to apps. So for external system, for Salesforce to contact Shopify, it has to contact through app. So without the app, we can Salesforce cannot contact Shopify. So for creating app, you have to go to apps and then click on develop apps, and then you have to click on allow legacy custom app development, right? Allow custom app development. Now you can click on create a legacy custom app. You can give this app any name. I'll give it Salesforce. Let's for now. Once the app is created, you have to configure admin API scope. Okay, so in this example, what all permission I give Salesforce to do in Shopify, we have to select the scope. So the only things that we want is we want the Salesforce to read customers, and we want Salesforce to write on customer record on Shopify. So it is again depend on business requirement what all scope you can select here, but in our example, since we are only updating customer in Shopify, we need to select these two scopes. So once that is done, you can click on save. Now go back to API credentials. Now you have saved the scope. You can click on install app to gain the access token. How Salesforce will communicate to Shopify using the access tokens. So access token will get on Shopify. If you click on install app, click on install, you will get this access token here. You can only see this access token once, so I'm currently not revealing it. I want you to look at the API document for Shopify first. Shopify API document you can write on Google. Since we are using REST API in this case, we'll click on REST admin API. Okay, now you can go to customer directly because we are creating customer from Salesforce. So whenever you are integrating two systems, you have to read the API document. You need to understand what is going on, how to communicate with the other system. So this is most important thing, right? If I go to post, because we would be posting contact data to Shopify, so we have to use the post here, right? If you can see on the header, two things are necessary. The first one is the Shopify access token, which we have now, and the other one is content type would be application JSON. So in JSON format we'll be sending data from Salesforce. And the other thing which is important is, first one is the body, and this one would be the URL, right? And this would be the response that we'll get back from Shopify whenever we post this thing, right? So now we understood that we need this access token in the header in order to do the call out. So now we have the access token generated here. We'll click on reveal token once. Okay, we'll copy it. I'll make sure to store it somewhere so that I can reuse it again. Okay, so now the next step is, whenever we create any custom app, it's always better to test it using Postman. So I can directly go into Salesforce and start building things, but it's always best practice to test any API on Postman first. So I'll go to Postman. Okay, so I have already created this collection. So here what you need to do is, first you have to write the URL. So URL is this one. I'll directly copy the URL, right? And here you need to give your store name. If you can see here, it's given some store name, your development store, but in this place your store name should be there, right? So what is your store name? If you go here, if you go back here, so on the URL you can see this realm of Salesforce. This was the store name which we have given, right? So I'll copy this store name and I have to paste it here. Okay, so now this is the store name I have pasted, and we need to select data as post because we are sending the contact data from Salesforce to Shopify, so it has to be post, right? And what we have seen, we need to give two headers. First one is this one, so I'll go to header, I'll add this one, and here we need to pass the access token, and the other one is content type will give application JSON, because we'll be passing the contact data as a JSON format, right? So since we are posting to Shopify, we also need to have the body in JSON format, right? So what all things we need. Okay, so if you want to see how we can pass the data, You can check the structure here as well. First we have the customer, and then we have the name and all details of the customer, right? So we'll use the same data. So we'll only add some base field here, not everything. Test. We can also pass the address. So this format would be same as here, because otherwise Shopify will not understand the request. So I have added customer first name, last name, email, and then the address of the customer. Address can be multiple, but here we have given only one address. So now if I click on send, it will create a customer on Shopify. Currently if I see on the customer, you cannot see any customer here. So let's check it out if the API is working or not. Okay, so it is showing the bad result. So let's see why it is failing. Okay, we have not given comma here. Let's give it and click on send again. Okay, now you can see 201 created. Now this customer is created on Shopify. Let's refresh this page again. Okay, now you can see this customer which we created using Postman. It has the same data, same address, whatever we have put on the body. So now we know that API is working. So now we need to set up the same thing. We need to pass the same parameters in header, same body from Salesforce in order to create customer in Shopify. So before moving to Salesforce setup, we'll see how data is flowing from Salesforce to Shopify. So first we have the Salesforce. It will do the API request. It will pass the URL, and the header will contain the access token to the Shopify API. Right, so Shopify API will validate if the token, access token is correct, and it will check all the permission that it has, basically the scope that it has to create and update customer. If everything passes, approved by the API, it will go to Shopify platform, and it will create the customer or update the customer. So in case of create customer, it will also generate a customer ID. So that will pass to Salesforce again on the response in form of JSON format, right? And Salesforce will store this customer ID into a field called Shopify customer ID field. So this is how the authentication flow will look like. So moving on to Salesforce, first we have to create a named credential, because to store all the auth related information like access token and everything URL, we need to create the named credential. So first I'll go to setup and I'll go to named credentials. Click on named credential. So you have to first create the external credential where you will store things like access token that we have. So I'll give it a name of Shopify auth, and authentication protocol would be custom. Click on save. Okay, so first you have to create the principals. So in principals, we are going to store the access token that we receive from the custom app in Shopify. Click on new. I'll give it a name as Shopify. Click on add parameter. I'll give token, and here we'll store the access token. So I paste access token. So you can see it's secured. You cannot see the access token here. Click on save. So you can see principal is created. Now we have to create the custom header. So what header we are going to pass? We know that we need to pass this Shopify access token header, and this we found it from the API document that this is the header that we need to pass, and the value would be the access token. So we have created the access token in the principal, right? So to fetch the value from principal, we have to write in this format. So this is the external credential. Then we have the name of the external credential, which is Shopify auth, and then we have to give the name of the parameter that we have. So we have store access token on token parameter, right? So you have to write in this way. Click on save. So instead of directly passing the value, like directly pass the value, you have to first create the para principal where you store the access token, and then you have to pass it on the value here, right? So now our external token is created. Now we'll create the named credentials. Click on new. I'll give it name as Shopify. Okay, what is the URL we need to pass? So we have to pass the same URL. This one, you don't need to pass admin API and all this. This will whenever we do call out, we'll add these things, but here as a base URL we'll only pass this thing on the URL. We'll mark this enable for call out as checked. The external credential we created Shopify underscore auth, we need to select that one, and here you can select allow formulas in HTTP header, because we have used formula while creating the external credential token. That's why we need to mark this as true, right? On header we are doing it. Rest you can keep it as it is and click on save. So now your named credential is also created, but for doing the call out, the user also has access to this external credential. Click on create new permission set. You can give name as, okay, so I have given the name external credential permission set. Click on save. Okay, so now you have to go to external credential principal access, and you need to select your external credential which you have created, which is Shopify auth. Add it and click on save. Okay, now go to your user. You can go to your user, or you can click on manage assignment. Click on add assignment and click the user in which you want to assign. So this is my user, I have selected that one. Click on next, click on assign. So now permission set is assigned to my user, and I can now able to do the call out. So the next step is to create trigger on contact. Why on contact? Because whenever contact is getting created in Salesforce, it will do the call out and the customer will get created on Shopify. And also for storing the customer ID, also we need to create one field on contact so that it will store the Shopify customer ID as well. It would be we can take it as text. Click on next. Shopify customer ID length would be 18. Click on save. Next, and then save. Okay, so now we are good to create the Apex trigger. We'll go to dev console. Okay, so we'll create a new Apex trigger here. I'll give it a name as contact trigger. We'll select object as contact. Okay, so on the contact we have to trigger it in after insert whenever a new contact is created, and also after update whenever the existing contact is updated. Okay, so here we have created list of contact IDs which will store all the contact ID which is either created or which is getting updated, and then we'll execute the queueable class that we are going to write, right? So in both cases we are passing two parameters here. First would be the contact IDs, the other one is create, or in case of update we are passing it as update, right? So let's go ahead and create the Apex queueable class. And why we are writing queueable class is because from trigger we cannot directly do call out. We have to use async apex class in order to do the call out. So in this case we are using the Queueable class. I'll click on new apex class, give it a name of Shopify customer. So in case of Queueable, you also need to implement it, need to add implements Queueable and database dot allows callout, because from this Queueable class we are doing the callouts, so we need to add it, right? And the basic structure of Queueable class we can add, since we are getting two parameters, list of IDs and operation could be either create or update that we have written on the trigger, right? So in Queueable we also need to add one more method, which is execute. So this is the basic structure of Queueable class. Okay, I'll click on save for now. Okay, and I'll also save the contact trigger. And now before writing the logic, we can also test if the callout is working or not, right? So is have we already set up everything correctly or not? So you can test it on the anonymous window. If you go to here, open execute anonymous window, and you write this code, HTTP request, we are passing the content type, and the for calling the named credential you have to write like this, and you can add the other URL we want to trigger, right? So in this case we are using this URL, and we have selected on the request method as get, because we want to test the API. So we are not posting anything. For testing we are using get to see if we are getting response from Shopify or not. So we are sending the request, and the response we get will see the body of that response on the debug. So if we click on execute, we can click on debug only, and you can see the customer data we are able to fetch from Shopify. So if you remember, this is the customer Steve which we created before on the Shopify. If I go again on the Shopify, you can see this customer data we are able to fetch in Salesforce. So our API request is working fine, the callout is working fine. We can write logic here. So I have pasted the code logic, and don't worry, you'll get the code in the link in the description. You can check it out. So what we are doing is we are first fetching all the contact record which we have updated or created, right? And then we are doing a for loop. Inside for loop we are creating the request, we are passing the content type. So in case of update and create, content type would be mandatory in both cases, so we have added it here. In case of create, we have this endpoint, right? This is from the named credential, and this is the endpoint which we have seen from the API document. So if you see on the API document, you can see this was the endpoint to post anything to the Shopify. So that URL we have used here. The method in case of create would be post, right? So in case of create, the request would be this one. So in case of update, and also while we are updating, we also need to make sure that customer ID is not null, because how Shopify will know which customer to update? Salesforce has to pass the customer ID as well. So if it has not to be null, right? And for update, what is the URL for update? If I go to API document again, okay, so if I go to customer here, and you can see put, if you click on this, so basically this is to update a customer. So for update customer, you can see the URL is little different. After customer you have this customer ID, Shopify customer ID. So that's why we have created the endpoint like this one. After customer we need to pass the customer ID which we are fetching from the contact field record, because we are storing the customer ID here, and then .json. So for update, the endpoint would look like this and the method would be put, right? So this you'll get from the API document of Shopify. If in case the operation is update but Shopify ID is null, so we don't need to update anything because the customer does not belongs to Shopify, right? So that's why we have written else. Then we have created this map. So map would be consisting of first name, last name and email. These are the fields which we are passing onto the body. And also we have created address in another map, right? The reason why we created address in another map is because if you see the data here, the response, the address, it's not a single address, it can contain multiple addresses because you can see a square bracket here. So it contains the list of address, right? But in this case there is only one address on the list, but the collection should be on the list. So that's why we created an object of address and we store it onto this addresses list, right? So this is list of address, and onto the main customer object we have added this list of address, right? And we also need to create the body which we need to pass on with the request. String would be, the key would be customer. Why the key is customer? Again, if you look at the format here, JSON format, it is customer and then the object which would be the other which will contain the first name, last name and the address, everything else, right? So this is in map format. We need to serialize it into JSON because we are sending data into JSON format to Shopify. Then we'll hit send, and then also in case of create, we also need to get the response of customer ID, because whenever a custom is getting created, Shopify will generate a customer ID and send it back to Salesforce in form of response, right? So in case of create, if the request is successful, we would be deserializing it and will finally update the contact customer ID based on whatever response we get from Shopify. So this is the code. You can go through it to understand it more better, but now we'll go on to the demo part. So first I'll go to contact. Okay, on the contact, so if I click on new contact, I have to fill all the values, and once I click on save, will get created as a customer in Shopify, right? So I can give any random name, Rahul Raj. I can add some phone number, although we are not syncing phone number, and we can give email, gmail.com, and we can also add some of the addresses, like, okay, I have added the details of address as well. So when I click on save, the trigger will run and it will call the Queueable class, which will do the call out. So I click on save. Okay, you can see the contact is saved in Salesforce. You can see customer ID is auto populated. Why? Because once the call out happens, it creates the customer in Shopify. If I click on a refresh here, you can see Rahul Raj is created. If I open that one, you can find all the details like email we have given the address and everything. So now once this is created, Shopify generates a customer ID and it would have sent it back to Salesforce, and based on the logic we are storing it in this place. Now whenever I do any update here, right, so it will send the customer ID again, so that Shopify will know that we need to update customer with this ID. So let's test this out as well. So if I click on edit on anything, so in this example, let's edit the street name. I'll give it as Newtown, right? And I click on save. So since now we have the customer ID, it will know which customer to update, and we can see if the data is syncing to Shopify or not. I refresh the page. You can see the address is updated to Newtown. So now whenever you create any contact now in Salesforce, it will create a customer in Shopify, generates the customer ID, send it back to Salesforce, and now whenever we update that customer, it will also sync with Shopify. So this is a example on how to integrate Salesforce with Shopify. Obviously based on different requirement, you would be building it differently, but the basic principle how to connect these two systems would be same. You can go through all the code and all the links that I will be giving in the description for better understanding. I hope you like this integration, and we will meet on the next video.